Hey guys, welcome back to Vinceville Customs. So today we're going to continue on with part 2 in a work in progress here, sponsored by Garagekits US Colors. They were kind enough to send over a bunch of paints and their Denizens of Zo Air Elemental Avia Bust. So in the previous video we pretty much did a lot of sand work, cleaning up a lot of flashing, getting everything ready for paints. So if you're new to the hobby and you really don't understand what you need to do beforehand, you can check out that video. This video we're going to dive into paints now. So whenever you want to work on a project, grab a lot of reference artwork, get a lot of pictures out there, get an idea of what you're going for, try to come up with a color scheme. So for this item, I'm kind of envisioning her to be more of a darker tan skin. You know, she is kind of like got that Asian look to her. So what I want to do is sort of give her a little bit more of a tan look. And I think the eyes will be more of like, if you ever seen like Naruto Byakugan. So I'm thinking of something like that for the eyes, because she is an air elemental. So my idea is darker skin, light hair, light eyes, and maybe like a white marble base. Something a little bit different. I'm envisioning that most people, or I've seen like I think a quick like grayscale of the original sculpt on Garagekits site. It's kind of like lighter skin and darker black hair. I kind of want to get away from that. I don't know. I'm just thinking of an air elemental. She would be more of a tan, and then maybe her hair is kind of like a lavender white. The white eyes like the Byakugan, and then maybe she would be wearing a white dress. It's kind of like my little vision of this item. So basically Garagekits has a really nice lavender, I think mixed up with some whites and some grays and blues. Maybe I could come up with a really cool hair. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off the idea of doing the eyes first, getting everything done with the eyes, and then masking it off with silly putty and then painting up the skin. Because I feel that at any point during the project, it'll be easier to take off the masking and then like see what I need to do with the eyes. You could do it the other way too if you want to paint up the skin and then do the eyes. The only reason why is I feel it's a little bit easier to spray a nice good even coat with the eyes now and mask it off than to try to go with a paintbrush and create too many brush strokes. So it all depends on how you want to work. Now one of the most important things about this item though is when you paint up the skin tone, you got to be very careful with all this necklace piece around here and the horns, because what happens is if you spray at an angle and you're not paying attention with some shading and you're not spraying downwards, what'll happen is the overspray goes over here and then you'll see sort of a different color because the paint isn't going over in that area. So that's very important to keep an eye on, especially with the horns too, whenever you're painting, that you're getting into those crevices, because you could do some really cool stuff here and then paint gets caught up in there and you get a sort of a weird effect. So that's one of those things you got to be careful of. So like I said, in this video we're going to focus on the eyes first. Then we're going to go and mask off the eyes after that's all sealed and painted, and we're going to work on the skin tone. And then hopefully after that we'll see how long this video goes, because I want to give as much detail as I possibly can. And then after that we'll probably dive into the rest of the item. So like I said, darker skin, more of a tannish look, lighter hair, like lavender, whitish type hair. Maybe I'll put a streak in there or something, who knows, maybe a blonde streak. We'll kind of play with that down the line. All the jewelry and the horns, I'm going for more silver look. I kind of like the idea of silver. I'm not really a fan of gold too much. And then the base will probably be like a whitish marble. So that's kind of my vision of the air elemental. It's kind of what I think she should look like. So we'll see how this pans out. So I'll get set up. We'll start with the eyes, then we'll work on that. I'll try to get the camera in as close as possible on how I kind of come up with that. And then after that, we'll dive into the skin. Okay, so in my cup, as you can see, it's a very, very tiny drop, not even a drop of black paint. It's a very, like, literally I took a paintbrush and I put a little tiny dab of the paintbrush in there and I darken up the white. And then I also put a very, very tiny drop of Garagekits flesh tone into the eye. Nothing too crazy, just as a base color. So you don't need to spray too much because you don't want the eyes to be perfectly white. So I just kind of give a nice little coat. That we're going to do some washes on it too as well, but this kind of just helps me get a nice smooth paint on it. And at any point, if you think you need to, you can hit it with a blow dryer. And I'll just do another quick coat on it. and I'll hit it with the blow dryer again. So what we'll do is we'll go get set up on the desk, and from there what we're going to start doing is a couple washes. We'll kind of work out a little bit of the pink and stuff on the eye, kind of work around the edges, and then after that we got to sort of build up the irises and stuff like that, which is going to be a little tricky only because there's really no lines there, so it's kind of hard to sit there and get the perfect look, but you know, with a little bit of work, you know, it'll go. One thing though is the reason why I'm doing this too, because if at any point I do mess up, I could always spray over it and do it again. Sometimes that happens. Alright, so we're all set up. I got a tons of different color paints here, all different stuff. They're all set up here. So we got a little bit of red, some white, some pearl white, and some Garagekits skin tone. So just to kind of start it off, we'll kind of mix up a little bit of white, a little bit of red, get a little bit of pink going. Of course, we got to throw on the magnifying glasses so we can see what's going on here. And basically, we'll try and sort of get a little bit of wash kind of to the eyes. A little bit down here, like so. Back into the white a little bit. Now, if you have like airbrush mediums, retarders, the kind of slow stuff to help blend, you can do that. Normally, I don't really use that much of that stuff. I just kind of use the water to let it dry. And let's see, if we want to, we can pop out a little bit of. Alright, so we got some raw umber, burnt sienna, some colors here as well. Kind of mixing in with some of the red, a bit of the brown. Try to stay away from the color black as much as you can whenever you're painting stuff up. So we'll kind of darken up this part of the eye, because it's going to be eyelashes anyway. Start giving it a little bit more color. Now, if you want, you can go and take some water and water this down a little bit more. And you can add a little bit more pinkish wash to this area here. A little bit over here. Now I got some of this pearl white, so I'll add some of the pearl white as well, kind of get a little bit of a pearlish look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep kind of doing some washes and getting the eyes sort of like, you know, going. And then once I'm kind of done with that, what I will do is go back in and we're going to start working out the basic look, which is tricky. Sometimes if you mess up after doing washes like this, it's a little bit hard. So you could probably seal it and get away with something like that. Okay, so basically, you know, we got some washes going. I'm going to kind of do a little bit more of line work at the bottom. I'm going to hit this with a blow dryer real quick. And that should help me get what I need to get. So I gotta kind of get in closer once in a while too. So let me hit it with this with a blow dryer. I'll do a quick lines at the bottom what I need to do, and we'll start working out the rest. So I got the eyes where I want them, at least the base part. So now we're gonna work out the, the irises and all that stuff. So I'm gonna mix up a little bit of lavender and white, just get a little bit of a color, and I'm gonna try to create the basic circle correctly on each eye, which is tricky. Sometimes you mess up, you gotta do it again. Some people I've seen, use a pencil or something, go in there and draw it. Other people, if it was a smaller statue, you can use eye decals, but since it's a little larger, it's going to be a little tricky. So I'm going to probably try to do this off camera because I got to get it nice and close. But once I get the basic shape back, we'll come back, and then basically we can start kind of coloring from there. So all I need is just a circle correctly on both sides. Now you also have to be careful too. You just don't do a perfect circle. You don't do a half a circle. You got to kind of, the top of your eye gets sort of cut off where the bottom of it sort of comes down a little bit, tiny bit of the bottom kind of gets cut off, but not much. It all depends on too, if you're looking upwards though, the eye is different. So you just got to study eye positions, and it'll help you get to where you need to go. So let me get that on and we'll come back. Okay, so step one, we basically got where the eyes are going. It's lavender with a little bit of white, but it just gives me my basic shapes. We're going to start adding on colors into it. I don't know if I'm going to go super realistic, but we'll try to get as much as possible you can. So the next step is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to find the very center of them and add black dots onto that. And then once that's done, hopefully we can start kind of like doing little like striations and kind of create the eyes a bit. So it's going to be mostly like grays with a little bit of the lavender and white, but that's kind of like where I'm going with it. It's really tricky. It's really tedious work. It's very hard to have the camera in place while doing it, but we'll try to kind of get as close as possible. But let me try to get the center of these done, which will probably be just a little bit of maybe a darker black mixed with the lavender, just to kind of get that centerpiece, and then from there I'll see how things work out. Alright, so I got my basic shapes done. As you can see, we pretty much have the circles and the little black dots in the center, and we're looking pretty good. So now I want to start detailing it up as much as I can without, going too crazy. If you can see, more power to you. If you want to really get in closer and you have some kind of a headgear, you could kind of get in there. I'm going to try to get in as close as I possibly can. I'm going to keep coming back and forth to the video to show you where I'm at. Because I really need to get in there and see what's going on. So I'm going to try to keep the lavender look, but we're going to go in with some grays and stuff, lines. Basically the top of it is sort of, darker, while the bottom will be lighter. We're going to try to bring out the circle edges a little bit more and try to really make them pop as much as possible. If you want, like I said, you could go online. You could look online for a lot of different ways people color eyes and draw. You could try to get as much as, close as possible to that. So let me just start doing a couple more steps. We'll come back, see how it looks, and keep going from there. Okay, so I was trying the Byakugan look and it really wasn't going where I wanted to, so I still want to keep her like that lavender sort of purplish type eye, but still keep it light. I do have a transparency lavender here, so I'm going to try to darken up the top of the eyes a little bit, but I still want to try to keep it light. So it's just a matter of taking your time, going in there, just kind of brushing, working out the eyes and stuff here and there. But I think it's working out pretty well. So let me kind of just keep plugging away, and we'll see how this turns out. Alright, so I'm still working it out, trying to get everything evened up as best as I can. I got some more tweaking to do here and there, especially on this eye over there. And then after that's done, I'm probably going to just put like a white dot here and there to kind of give the highlights. And then pretty much, it's done and we seal it up. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with where the eyes are at right now. I think it should work out pretty well. So what I'm going to do right now is just grab my paintbrush. This is actually pearl white from Garagekits. It's actually not as like a thick white as some other brands. So it's almost kind of watery. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of brush some pearl white over the eye. Just kind of go all over it. So it tones down the eyes a little bit, gives it kind of a glow. So that's kind of like where I want to go with it. So the eyes are sort of there, but they're also kind of like pearled up. So I might hit it with the blow dryer and do another coat, and then we're going to seal this up, and then we'll start mixing up colors for the skin. Alright, before we start painting, this is kind of like an afterthought for the video. So I've already painted up the item, but I'm going back here to kind of give a little bit of an input. One, sorry if my hand is in front of the video when I paint, only because it's very hard for me to position the camera and paint well at the same time, but giving you guys an idea. One of the important things too, real quick, about airbrushing is if you have a dual airbrush, basically it's pushing it down and pulling it back. So if you push it down a little bit, you get a little bit of a spray, and if you pull it back, it's thicker. So pushing it down is pressure, pulling it back is thickness. So you got to get used to being able to paint with the brush like that. So one of the things you got to be careful of when you start painting is also make sure your airbrush is clean. If you're spraying your airbrush and you're getting dot, 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 dot like that, your actually airbrush is clogged. That's something that you want to be careful of. You're not going to get good blending. You want to be able to have your airbrush a nice even flow. So if you're going like this and then you're going thicker like that, you got a nice good flow on your airbrush. That's something too you want to practice. If you're new to airbrushing and you got yourself a nice dual action, which is pushing down, pulling backwards, this airbrush has a little bit of a pressure gauge here, which makes life easier. You want to practice doing stuff like this. Sitting there and getting a nice flow, getting used to just doing a nice little line, being able to sit there and go thicker and then thinner, thicker and then thinner. So if you pick up an airbrush and you're new, sit there on a piece of cardboard like this and just practice. Just get there and practice the airbrush. It's all muscle memory. It's all about muscle memory with your thing, because if you're airbrushing for the first time and you're not paying attention when you sit there and you just all of a sudden, boom, you hit that and then you mess up your item. It's all about slowly pressing down and getting that thickness. Being able to blend up an area like so. So just get used to practicing it, you know, get your board, sit there and do all stuff like this. You know, being able just to kind of run with it. Now, another thing too is gradients. So say we have our darkest color here, right? Now it's going to be hard to mix it up in the airbrush because I already have blue in my cup. But say we mix up white, right? So over here it's like 10, this is like 10% blue and white, okay? So you want to get used to being able to sit here and sort of mix up your white, mix up your blues, you know, and maybe start learning how to get, okay, this will be like my, you know, 40%, you know, you mix up a little bit more blue, kind of my 50%, mix up a little bit more blue, that's kind of my 60, you mix up more blue, and we're at our like 70, but the problem is if you have any kind of white in there, it's going to be hard, and then you get to your 90, and then if you have your pure blue, you're getting to your 100. So that's an important thing too, is when you airbrush. You want to be able to learn how to go from your lightest, mixing in the same color, to your darkest. And like I say, it's all about the pressure. It's all about getting used to stuff. Now, a lot of people say like they don't understand why their airbrush is splurting on them. Well, your airbrush could be clogged. Sometimes the tip of the airbrush gets clogged, and you know, you start spraying stuff. Sometimes people don't realize they're so close to an item, you're spurting and you're spraying so hard. So that's when you kind of want to go with your pressure downwards, and then you got it going closer, and it's not spraying heavy. So you got to get used to your tool. Get online, learn about how to break down your airbrush to clean it. Try to find out about certain paints. Sometimes your paints will dry up on your tip, you know, up there, and then all of a sudden your paint's not coming out correctly. Sometimes if your pressure is so low, it's kind of coming out as like cakey and blurty. That's not good either. You got to have sort of a good pressure, but not being able pulling that airbrush back so far. Another thing too is when you paint, sometimes just hitting the area with a little bit of color, just a little bit of color goes a long way than sitting there trying to like, all right, I want to shade that in, you know. A little bit of color goes a long way. And then say you did a base coat of an item. Say we got, all right, so our color is blue, right? And you add a little white in there. So you want to start and you start kind of blending it out, you know. So it's all about blending, it's all about getting the airbrush going and learning your colors, pressure, and all that stuff, making sure your airbrush is clean after everything. And if you're not getting these lines, you got a problem with your brush. So I suggest you go online, look up on how to break your airbrush down, make sure the thing is always clean, and go from there. So that's kind of a little bit of a note before we start diving into the airbrush. It's kind of quick. I'm not really focusing too much on this video, but it's a little bit of a tip if you guys go, you know, do some research and make sure everything's working well. So with that being said, let's get into the painting. So the eyes are all sealed up. I just did a basic gloss coat on them. I'll probably do another gloss coat later. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a base coat for this just so I can get a base color on her. So this is an old bottle of Garagekits Flesh Tone. I like to kind of salvage these bottles because they're good. So basically I'll just add some more flesh into here. You want to at least have enough though. You don't want to just have a little bit and then you got to go back. So like I said, I'm going to make her a little bit of a tan color, but we're going to add a little bit of transparent bright flesh. It's kind of like a little reddish color. We'll add a little bit of burnt sienna into it. We have a lot of other colors here. We got bronze flashes, we got transparency flashes, we got raw sienna, whatever you want to go. So what I usually like to do is kind of just mix up some colors here. Let's see. The colors we got, whatever you got in there, just kind of mix up. Let's see how this is looking. So always do a test. Now you don't want to spray around the eye area, of course. Not a bad color there. It needs a little bit more, so probably what I'll do is pop this open again. Like I said, you always want to make sure you mix up enough though. It's better to have a little bit of extra paint than not enough. It's an important rule. That's what I was looking for. So if you have an old airbrush needle, you can just use that for... Okay, that should be good enough for that. We'll throw a little bit of raw sienna in here. Not too much, but enough. If you're good, you can use your thumb. Just make sure you don't kind of get it all over the place. Give you a little idea where the color is. Like I said, I'm trying to go for a little bit of the tanner look. Good, that's the kind of color I'm going for. That's my base color. That's going to be just the base color. I think that's really good. We'll be using some of the raw sienna and other transparencies to sort of break out that color a little bit more. Put a little bit of the paint. Yeah, so I might, you know what, we might add just a little bit more into there. So, like I said, you can't be afraid to kind of add a little extra colors. I think what we'll do is we'll add a little bit of transparency pale flesh because that's a little bit more orangey. Throw some there. We got some bronze flesh. So we'll add a little bit of bronze flesh. And then I think what we'll do is we'll add just a couple more drops of the burnt sienna. And then a little bit more raw sienna. And one thing too that's good is if you ever mix up colors and then all of a sudden you realize your color's messed up, you can save the bottle of paint for a future project. It's not the end of the world. Let's get in there. Yeah, I like that color. That's good. Got a nice little bit of a mid-tone, so when we add shadows, that'll pop it out. Okay, that's I'm looking at a picture up there, so that's definitely a good base mid-tone. That's a good mid-tone, it's a good base color. Shadows will help pop it out, but I think we're looking pretty good there. So, just to be on the safe side, we'll put the cap back on so it doesn't fall off and we lose all that color. So, next step is silly putty and masking. So we're just going to go over to the thing when I'm ready, and we'll mask off the eyes, and then we'll start doing our base coats and sort of start bringing out the skin tone. Okay, so time to mask up the eyes. Now, all I really need is silly putty to mask the eyes. I use silly putty for all my masking needs. I don't use tape. I don't use that liquid tex stuff or whatever that you know, liquid stuff you put on there and you peel off. I've always had bad issues with all that stuff. Plus, to try to get tape in those eyes would be a nightmare. So back in the day, someone told me just get original pink silly putty and go from there. So you see, this is some fairly clean silly putty. This is some really dirty silly putty. And then right here is brand new fresh silly putty. So if you go onto the Crayola website, you can get a 5-pound brick of this stuff and it'll last you years. I think since I've actually started this hobby back in like around 2006, I think I bought about 3 bricks so far, but I do a lot of painting and masking. So I'm going to actually pull out some fresh silly putty. All you really need to do is just pull it out with your finger, sort of kind of just soften it up a bit, you know, whatever. Get yourself a dentist tool or some kind of masking tool, and then you just need a little bit, you know, just a tiny bit like this will go a long way. You put it over the eyes and you just mask them off. It's really not that hard. It's a great masking tool. You don't need to, you know, shove a whole thing in there. Just a little bit goes a long way. The only thing you need to understand about silly putty is certain paints you use may cause issues. Meaning, one, if you paint up your item, make sure it's dry before you start adding silly putty, because if the paint is wet and you add the silly putty and you pull it off, you run into issues. Two, if you do any kind of candy coat items, certain candy coats may actually pull out little, you know, things of paint that are stuck in here. So if you got, you know, if you got some silly putty and you kind of, you know, you knead it up, break up all that little paint in there. But say there's that, you know, a nice little chunk of paint sitting there, and you did a candy coat on something, and that candy coat still takes a long time to cure, and you put silly putty on it and you pull it off. Sometimes that candy coat stuff will do it. One that comes to mind is like Tamiya clear coats. Those things kind of might pull out some stuff. So you just got to be used to and do some testing. But a majority of the time, if you paint up your item with some acrylics, enamels, or lacquers, and the paint dries fairly well and it's not tacky, you should be fine just putting silly putty on there. And you can use silly putty over and over and over until the point where it's so nasty and disgusting you could throw it away. But even then, you can use it for like bases or priming items. So say you wanted to prime up an area, but you didn't want to prime the other area, you can use this old silly putty, put it on, spray it down, and then take that silly putty and throw it away. So this stuff goes a long way. If it's 5-pound bricks is too much for you and you know somebody else in the hobby, you could go halves on it, you know, just go there. So let me get this onto the eye, get that set up, and then we could start painting her up. So as you can see, the silly putty is over the eyes. It took a very tiny bit, not much at all. Like I said, you don't need to glob it on there. A little bit spreads it far enough around. You just don't want to dig it into the eyes, of course. Just take your time. Any kind of a tool will get on there. I put some saran wrap at the bottom because of any overspray. At least this won't get all dusty and stuff. So we're pretty simple. So what I like to do for the first part of any garage kit building when I do the skin tone is I'm going to do a nice layer coat of skin tone first, look it over, make sure I didn't miss anything. Because sometimes when you add primer to your item, there might be a little bit of an issue or a scratch or something you kind of missed. So you got to go in there and kind of fix it up just to be on the safe side. I'm not going to go crazy with a super thick coating and like make it bleed, just enough to get some kind of a good coating on the item like I did here. And then after that, if everything's looking good, we start blending it all out. So we got our base coat on and everything's looking pretty good. I went over it to make sure there was nothing, any issues. A couple little spots of paint that were kind of a little bit, you know, gunked on. I kind of wiped off and we got cleaned up. So in my cup, I mixed up a little bit of burnt sienna and some of the original skin tone, and I thinned it down a little bit with a transparency bright flesh and a little bit of the pale flesh. So what I like to do is just kind of rough stuff out. I like to blend, so I'm just gonna hit a couple areas. I don't care if it's a little bit over, you know, too much, like, you know, that's a lot, but that's okay. It's all gonna get taken down. A little bit of the cheekbones, a little bit underneath the horn, inside the ear, under there. Like I said, I messed that up, it's not a big deal. It's kind of just helps me rough stuff out. Just hitting all these little areas, just kind of throwing paint there. Starts to look like an alien. Now, like I said, you know, you got to be careful when you start doing the jewelry areas, because if you don't go in that specific spot, Alright, got a feel for how paint is hitting the item. You know, I can see where like this, you know, the jewelry here is going to be kind of a pain. So I'm just going to go back to the original color and kind of take it down with a little bit of thinned out. Just kind of mask it down a little bit. I mean, at least now I got a little bit better of an understanding where stuff's hitting it. You know, a little bit of that shadow stuff will stay underneath the necklace. I think it should work out pretty well. But I still want to give her the tan look, so we still got to bring out more of the shadows. But at least now, you can see where things are hitting it. So it's a lot of layering and a lot of messing around and stuff. Alright, so we just mixed up some more of the browns, you know, a couple more of the raw sienna, some of the, let's see, burnt sienna, some bright flesh, kind of just mixed in a little bit more. So I want to kind of bring out some of the shadows a little bit more on her. I mean, I'll be going in here with some, you know, makeup, some powder stuff later. But for right now, we're kind of just playing with the piece, you know, just kind of adding color here and there. Not trying to think too much about it. Definitely hit some areas. Have to turn the item around. Like I say, I'm not overthinking it, just kind of just getting a nice little build up. Definitely going for the tan though, so I don't mind darkening it up a little bit more. Make sure you don't miss areas like behind that hair. More with the neck. Underneath the mouth, side of the noses, under the nose, eye sockets. Alright, I think we got a lot of the dark areas are done. Definitely give it more of a tan. So for here, we're going to add some transparency pale flesh, which is basically a nice orangey color. This is I really like this color a lot from Garagekits. It definitely brings out some of like what a tan, like that golden color, what I'm looking for. Alright, so I want to pop some highlights a little bit more, so I went back to my original base coat and I thinned it down with a lot of water. So I'm just going to it's kind of like doing a little bit of a washing on it in a sense. So we'll kind of hit the collarbone, a little bit of the chest. Make sure we're going nice uniformed area. Now at the bottom of the chin, a little bit on top of the nose. Let's bring out the cheekbones a little bit. Upper lip, a little bit of the forehead. Around the cheeks. On the ears, the neck, shoulder. Above the eye areas, so we're going to kind of hit that with some powder later to kind of bring that out. The lips. So at this point, what I like to do is just keep blending. I just keep blending. I just keep going and going, getting used to where I'm adding color. If I feel I went too dark, I lighten up. If I feel I went too light, I darken back down. And just keep going with it. So I'm going to go back in and do some more shading. Just kind of keep going and going and going. So we got a little bit more highlights, but I want to go back to the orange. I want to go back to shading it. So let's keep doing that. Alright, so we're going back to a little bit of the darker. It's a very watered down version. So here I just added a little bit of the original color into the mix. Just going light, hitting dark, you know, areas, lighter areas, just kind of playing with it. So I think now as I'll clean out the airbrush and kind of go back to the transparency pale flesh, kind of hit more areas with that. Alright, so we're getting pretty much a really nice tan on her. Kind of liking where it's going. So I kind of want to golden her up a bit. I think I have a sepia. Let me see what colors I got, and then we can kind of like mist some on her. Alright, so this is gold toner. It's sort of like a semi-transparency. It definitely gives it a nice golden look to the character. So I'm just kind of hitting all over some of these areas, especially the highlighted stuff. It's nothing too crazy. Alright, we're looking pretty good with that so far. So at this point, what I like to do is I like to use Tester's dull coat out of a can, and with Garagekit colors it sort of helps like melt the colors. So I just kind of spray it down. A lot of the colors sort of blend. It's kind of weird how it reacts to it in a way. Stuff stinks, so you definitely have to have your airbrush something on. So I'm going to let this dry up a little bit. We'll come back, and then I think what I'm going to do is start hitting some more highlighted areas, and then we just keep going, and we should have a really nice tan look on her. Alright, so it dried up fairly fast. So now we have transparency bright flesh, which is a little bit more of a red. It's kind of like the transparency pale. So basically I'm just going to hit the cheeks a little bit with this. Give a nice little reddish cheek stir. Now, because it's such a bigger item, you don't really have to use any blush for like women's makeup or anything. I mean, you could if you really want to, but I think that kind of does what it needs to do. We'll hit a little bit in the front too. There you go. Got a nice little reddish cheeks there. And we'll add a little bit of this to her chest area. Alright, so this is Chestnut from Garagekits. I never really used this before, so we'll kind of see how this sort of looks on it. It's not really a solid color, but it's not really transparency. Not bad. That helps darken up some of these little areas. Got a nice good orange to it, like it's glowing. Not really worried about all the lips, you know, because if the lips get messy, it's not a big deal. That'll get cleaned out. I'm going to add some color to her eyes later, give it a little bit of a smoky look to it. We'll get to that in a second. So the idea is just keep playing with your item. You know, just keep adding some layers, just keep going. Don't overspray, mist. Let's try and add a little bit of the original color to the chestnut. Let's see if this kind of gives a nice little highlighted area. It's always good to kind of keep mixing in your cup. Kind of bring out the shoulder again. Just kind of hit here at the neck. Yeah, this is a nice little color. Starts blending it together a little bit. Get there with the chin. And that's the only downside about adding colors into the cups, because the problem is if you ever have to touch up later, it's kind of hard. Trying to bring out the nose a little bit. So like I say, I don't have a set way of doing stuff, just kind of keep adding colors, blending. The goal is not to really throw a lot of, you know, any kind of blues or greens into her. We're going for a tan look. Like I say, I'm kind of following someone's artwork, you know, that I've seen on DeviantArt as well. Just kind of adding these little colors in there, kind of helps pop it out a little bit. You know, the nose is popping a little bit more. Kind of hit over there. Hit the cheek a little bit. Let's throw a little bit more of the flesh tone in here. Always the character looks like an alien. Always at this point in the game when I'm working on stuff, they do look alien-like. So if you ever want to sort of see what's going on, you know, grab a couple different color paint bottles, depending on what you're working on. So if there's going to be like white and black in the item, you can kind of start like seeing where the colors are going on the faces type thing. Gets a little bit of a better idea. If the character is going to be red, you know, you can kind of throw a red item next to it, see where that is going. So it's just a matter of testing, blending, testing, blending. So I'm mixing in a little bit more of the original color. I'm going to thin it down just a little bit more. And let's see if we could do a little bit more highlights a little bit later. So we'll kind of hit a little bit more on the chest, make these pop a little bit. A little bit right here, a little bit on the neck. Let's hit a little bit of the chin, a little bit up here, nose. Alright, so if you get in any kind of splatter, that is because it's too low. Alright, I think we're getting good there. A little bit of a build-up. So if you get a little build-up, see if it'll wipe away if you're lucky. And that did. Alright, so I'm going to like take a step back from this. Look at it far away. I might bring it into another room just to see what it is in lighting in the other room. Because what happens is when you get a lot of airbrush and paint in a booth or something, you kind of start losing your item. So it kind of helps to bring it out around the house. And then I might see what I'm missing, what I need to do. Alright, at this point, I want to kind of darken a few areas. So just going in back with the, what was it again? I think it's the burnt sienna. I think it is. Hold on. Yeah, burnt sienna. So I just want to go in there and sort of hit a couple areas. Darkening the ear areas a little bit. Over here. Can't forget underneath those horns and stuff. A bit over there. A little bit behind the ear. More the cheekbones, make them pop a little bit more. Kind of hit over here a little bit. Making sure that neck pops out a little bit more as well. So just kind of hit here. Okay. So at that point I kind of like to clean out my cups between stuff. Don't always keep the same paint in and keep going. So I think we're going to go back in with a little bit more of that pale flesh, transparency pale flesh. Just kind of darken up here a little bit. And sort of hit some areas there. And then I think after that, we're pretty much ready to start doing some of the women's makeup on the face area, kind of hit some areas I can't get with the brush. But I think we're going to probably do a little bit of smoke around the eyes, just a little bit. We'll get into that in a second. Alright, so I want to give her a little bit of a smoky eye effect now before I go in and do any pastel work, only because it's a little bit easier to get a nice base coat in there. So I have my airbrush that I use for really smaller detail stuff. It's got the smaller cup, HPB, Iwata, works out really well. Low PSI, so I put some Payne's Gray in there, so you can see it's kind of like a transparency bluish black. So that'll kind of help out there. So I'll bring the camera down a little bit, and I'll kind of show you, fast how we get this smoky eye. It's a little bit tricky because if you don't have control with the airbrush and you overspray, you ruin everything. And if you spray too much, it might bleed. So sometimes what I like to do is kind of hit it with a blow dryer first, get it a little bit warm, and then maybe get in there and kind of create that smoky eye effect. You just got to be careful not to go too crazy and then you overspray. Yeah, so this part's tricky. So if you want to kind of just practice real quick, you could kind of spray over on the hair, won't make a difference. Makes it pop a little bit more, kind of. So we got a nice little smoke there, nothing too crazy, and I think it works. I don't think I need to go any more on that. If I do, let's see, we just gotta make sure this side just needs a little bit of a hit. There we go. I think that works out pretty well. And if you... There we go. Not bad. Alright, so next step is we're going to go and do some pastel work, which is I use women's makeup, and hopefully we can kind of pop out some areas and then seal it up. Okay, so we're going to do some pastel work. Now, as far as pastels, you can use charcoal pastels, really fine pastels. you can scrape off the sticks. Or if, like me, you can go over to CVS and buy women's makeup, or you can buy a kit off eBay like this. Same thing. I just like to use the women's makeup because it's pretty much already done. It's a nice fine powder. The only thing is, like every other thing out there, you gotta sort of, you know, seal it. So other than that, it's just a matter of going through your piece and seeing if you can do some highlighted areas. So, you know, we'll kind of hit some colors here, throw it on this, and then, you know, maybe a little bit on the nose. Nothing too crazy. Maybe kind of hit some areas that you probably wouldn't be able to get with the airbrush. Now, the way I paint, the way I do this stuff, it really doesn't stay on too well. But a little tiny powder can go a long way, you know. You might not notice it really like a lot, but just a tiny bit of little gradations help, you know. And then you got some of this blush here. So if you wanted to, you can take some blush and sort of pop this a little, maybe soften it up a little bit. Kind of start help bringing it together a little bit more. As far as the eyes, so there is stuff that's a little bit pasty. It's not bad, but you got to be very careful with it. Like this stuff's a little bit softer, but it's actually not that bad. You can seal it down, so you can kind of test it. It's like, it's a little too much darker there. So you go to the lighter one, and you kind of see how the lighter one is. So this one's a little bit like wetter, and it's got a little bit of like a sheen to it. Sometimes this stuff is okay, sometimes it's not. So if you kind of do a little bit of a test, maybe you can sort of see. If it's too much, you grab one of the newer ones and kind of just pull it back off. So you got to be careful with some you have, some you don't. These here are nice, so make sure you grab some. You get these things, you know, cheap. So I'm just kind of like highlighting this area a little bit, make it pop a little bit more. Helps tone down any little of the overspray from the smoky eye. And if it's got a little bit of glitter in there for the eyes, it's not the end of the world to kind of make it help pop a little bit. So this stuff over here isn't that bad. You want to get the flatter stuff. You want to look for more of the flat stuff, but at least around the eyes, I don't mind adding the stuff that has a little bit of this glitter. Kind of makes it pop a little bit more. Like so. And you just keep playing with it, adding colors. Let's see, a little bit of a darker one probably over here. And just help popping it out a little bit, getting some areas. So you could probably use a little bit of a lighter one, mix with this one. You could probably go on the lip area. Sort of just kind of bring it out a little bit more. A little bit on the chin. So it starts to help, start to get a little bit more blending going. So I just keep doing this for a while, kind of blend it out. Also take it away from bright lights and different lights, kind of see where you're going with it, you know. And I'm just going to keep doing this for a while, and then we'll see how this looks when I'm ready to start sealing it up. Okay, so as you saw, we did our powder work. I pretty much got it to where I wanted to. I did add a little bit of the shinier stuff on the eyes, just to make them pop a little bit. I still have to, you know, seal this item up and dull it down, so it's very, very shiny right now. It's hitting a lot of lights, but that'll get all dulled down and it'll come together and look better anyway. But bringing her into the photo setup with taking the masking off the eyes now, I got a really better understanding of where I'm at. I'm really happy with it. So you think the backdrop is kind of like where the hair color might be if I go that route with the, you know, the lavender type of eyes, like the eyes on the hair, I think would really bring it all together. And she looks a little weird right now only because, you know, we don't have the lips done, we don't have the dark eyelashes, we don't have the eyebrows done, the hair. So she looks very odd. But it's definitely where I wanted it to be. I really like this tannish golden look to her, which I think is pretty cool. So other than that, tomorrow we have to seal, and then I can dull it down and we can start adding on all those elements, get all the facial features done and everything, and then we can go on to the next steps. But this gives you an idea though that you don't need to add blues and greens and reds and washes and stuff to get a really cool skin tone. If you're new to the hobby, you know, just learning how to get your lightest color to your darkest color and you can get something really cool. So you figure these colors right here are kind of like the colors to make it pop, but this color here and this color here is the main colors I use for this. So this is the brightest base color, and then you figure this is the darkest color. So you got to learn how to go from, you figure this is 10%, then you could go to 20, 30, 40, 50, all the way up to 100. So you'd be able to mix a little bit of this to this, and then you keep going to where this is hardly mixed into that. And that's kind of what I did for my sculpt. So there's a lot of blending going on in these areas. So you got a little bit of darker there, and it kind of blends out around there, and then it goes darker to there. So it's all about blending your item and just getting the stuff going, because you don't want a heavy shade and then a hard, bright, you know, shadow. You want to be able to blend your items. And then once you pretty much get your base colors going, you know, you're adding these transparencies in there to make it pop a little bit more. So this is kind of more of the simple look. It's more kind of like how I like to paint anyway. You don't want to put any black paint into your item. If you want to go with dark color, you can throw a little bit of browns in there, but even brown has a little too black in it. You want to go blues and greens. If you want to go that route, you can mix some blues and greens into these colors here, and you can create a darker color that route. So always stay away from black. Now the eyeshadow may look black, but that's kind of that Payne's gray to give you that smoky look. But other than that, there is no other black. Even though this looks like it's a little bit of black there, it's not. It's this you know, burnt sienna, but with the shadowing coming down, it kind of makes it a little bit darker there. Same thing in here with the shadow with the lights. So when you kind of turn her, that stuff kind of goes away a little bit, but it's still a little bit there. So that's kind of like how I paint. It's kind of good for, you know, newer people to the hobby. You don't need to go crazy having 15,000 colors and washes and all that stuff. You can go simple and it still works. So I kind of stick to the comic book look. You know, simple. You know, if you look at a lot of comic books, you always get the light color, you get a mid-tone, and then the darker color, and that's pretty much where you're at, and it works. So I'm going to put this aside for tonight, come back tomorrow with fresh eyes, look at it, see if there's anything else I need to touch up. If not, we're going to seal, detail up the face, get a lot of other stuff going, and then maybe this video will be closed out, and then we can start working on the final video, which would be the hair, and the base and all that stuff, and really bring it all together. Okay, so it's the next day, and what I want to do is I want to seal her up. I really want to give a nice good candy shell protecting. So this is kind of my own little formula. I use this for a lot of my skin tones. What it does is not only does it protect the skin tone for the long run, but it also gives me room for error, and I'll kind of explain that in a bit. But if you don't want to go as extreme as I'm about to go, Garagekits makes a flat top coat. It's really nice stuff. I use it for a couple other projects here and there for specific things. So at this point, if you wanted to seal her down, you can use Garagekits flat top coat. You can dull her down, seal everything, and you're ready to go. You just got to be careful with handling it because it is a bust. You got to get in with detail, so you want to be a little bit careful. So what I like to do for a lot of my skin tones and everything is I have Duplicolor Clear Gloss Finish, which is kind of a car paint, and it's super clear. I'm going to spray her down, and it's going to look like she's soaking wet and shiny, but I'm not going to spray it to the point where it's like bleeding, of course. You know, like regular coating up an item. And then I'm going to let that dry for a little bit. It doesn't take long, you know, it pretty much will start to kind of like, you know, cure up in like 10-15 minutes. And then once that's done, she's going to look really, really, really shiny. It's going to be like, why did you go that route? But what happens is I'm going to use Mecha Varnish, matte varnish, and I'm going to dull it back down. It's going to get to the point where it's going to dull back down to the point where it doesn't even look like there's a top coat on her. It's going to be really, really flat. This kind of formula stuff really works well. And what this does is it creates a room for error. So we have our skin tone. We're going to add the perfect clear gloss finish onto her. That's another layer. That's like a candy layer. And then we're adding the Mecha Varnish on top of it, which dulls that down, and that's another layer. So what happens is, if she has like a dress or a necklace or the hair, right now, if I was to do like, say, black hair with the paint bottles, if they're very watery, what happens is if I'm doing a strand of hair and I kind of mess up, this paint is going to soak up those pigments, and you can't really erase that. You can't get that out of there. So you got to be very, very careful. So basically what this does, this is going to give me like a little bit of a protecting. So it's like, say I kind of messed up on a little bit of the hair and there's a little bit of bleeding. What happens is you got the gloss coat and you got the varnish. So I got these little kind of like, you know, little brush tools. So I could go in there and with like lick it a little bit with my tongue and then kind of get in there and kind of clean it up. And I could kind of like erase that little error. Now you can't keep erasing the error to the point where you rip off the paint, of course, but it kind of helps you with that one chance to kind of go back. It really does work out pretty well for what I do, so it kind of helps out. It's just something that I came up with, and it just works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to seal this up right now, get a nice good gloss coat. Once that's done, we'll dull it back down. You'll see the difference of glossing it up and then really flattening it. And then from there, I could go in and do the lips, I can do the eyes, the eyebrows, the hair and everything. And I could kind of handle her a little bit more without worrying about, you know, scratching the paint or, you know, messing up the powder or any of that stuff. And then if at any point you rub off some of this varnish to the point where it starts getting shiny again, because sometimes that might happen if you handle it too much, you can go back in with the varnish and dull it back down. So that's kind of what we're going to do right now. And then after that, we can start working on the facial features, you know, the eyelashes, the eyebrows, the lips, do a lot of trim, kind of plan some stuff out and see where we end up. So, it's been about an hour since I did all the sealing, and it's pretty much dried up pretty well, and I think we're ready to go to start kind of detailing and stuff. So I'm going to do the eyelashes now, and then I am going to probably decide on what lip colors I'm going to go. So it's kind of a process. You got to kind of figure out you know, where you're going with this stuff. So I'm thinking more of maybe a darker red lips. You know, I'm going to look online with some other colors. I don't want anything bright red. I want to try to either maybe keep a little natural, maybe a little bit pinkish. I don't know. We'll kind of see how that goes. Probably what I'll do is I'll start with washes first, see how that looks, and then maybe kind of add in more. Not really sure. And then once I get through that and I get the facial features done, I got to kind of debate, do I do the hair first and then go on to the jewelry, or do the jewelry first and then go on to the hair? It all depends on how I want to paint up this jewelry. I'm still kind of debating on maybe trying to change it up and have some fun with it. The horns or the whatever these are, these bone pieces, probably going to go, you know, with like a white, off-white stained old look, like their teeth almost. We'll see about that. And then I got to kind of debate on here. Do I color this area up over here with like a darker black and then paint this base, or do I kind of... So I got to kind of figure out how I'm going to do these sides over here. It's kind of a little bit tricky. So things evolve though. Sometimes you have something in mind, and then when you're ready to start working on it, you start painting, you decide that, okay, well, this color's better or this should look better. So you always go back and forth. So let's get these eyelashes done, and then we'll get the lips done, and then hopefully there will help me set up some other colors and what I want to do next. So I got the eyelashes done. I kind of went in with the eyes a little bit more, added some reds and browns and stuff, just kind of working out the eyes a little bit more. So I'm going to do the lips first. Now, as for the lips, I'm going to use some of the Transparency Bright Flesh just to get like a washing around the lips, kind of see where I'm going with it. And then after that, I think I'm going to go a little bit more of like a darker lip on her. I don't think like a pinkish would look right. I think it would bring too much out, so I want to go a little bit more darker with that. So it's just kind of playing with it. It's just kind of going in back and forth, seeing where I'm going. I'm looking online about some stuff, so I think like a more of a brownish lipstick, you know, kind of like that. I don't know, we'll see how it goes. So first I'll start off with a wash, get my basic look, and from there we'll start seeing, like, you know, what I'm gonna do. Alright, so I did a wash on her first, and it was too orangey, so I figured, okay, let me go with that darker red like I was talking about, so that's kind of where we're at. I'm going to put a little bit of this darker red with a little bit of blue in the inside of the lips, just to kind of darken it up some more, with a little bit of the brown and stuff like that, just to kind of get a little bit of a darker area in there. I debated on putting a trim around it, like a darker, like, you know, brown, bluish kind of thing around there to give it that 90s look of the lips, which I still might do. I mean, I like where it's at right now, but just kind of having fun with it, make it pop a little bit more. So let's see what I come up with. Okay, so it took some time to get it where I wanted to, so I really like this. It makes it pop a little bit more, but it's not overpowering. Little bit of the bluish tint with the browns and reds and stuff sort of gave it a little bit of a purplish look. I really like it. It definitely feels like she's got some nice makeup on. I didn't want it just too close to the skin, and I didn't want it too bright. So I just kept adding layers and stuff. Plus, we got this 90s look to her, too, which I kind of like. I kind of like the edge kind of being darker and the insides being a little lighter. So I did add striations to it, so you can kind of see, like, the striations to the lips. So because this is such a bigger item, if you got a really nice thin paintbrush, you could kind of just go in there and stuff. So I might just darken the inside a little bit more. So then that's where we're going to go with that. Now, as far as the eyebrows, I think I'm going to do like a darkish brown on those, or like a black wash or something, kind of keep those dark. And then since the hair is going to be white, I think it'll pull it together a little bit better. I'm not really a fan of adding like white eyebrows and like whitish hair, like even if it's like that lavender look I'm going to go for. I'm not really a fan of doing that type of a look. I definitely got to do the horns after I do the hair. That's a definite. And then I think if I can be careful, after I do the hair, I can work out the necklace. But like I said, I think one of the next steps too is I gotta really think. I'm thinking of maybe if I could get this black, just kind of do this part black here and this part black here, and then do whatever I do for this base. I think it'll come together. So yeah, I think it's working out pretty well so far. Alright, I'm just gonna do the eyebrows right now, and then we're gonna go over what we did and just kind of close out things. But I think what I'm gonna do is mix up a little bit of burnt umber and some black, and just try to give her a little bit of like black eyebrows. I'm trying to try not to go too thick on it. I'm going to try to water it down a little bit and slowly build it up. I don't want to just go globs of black or brown on there. We'll see how it works out. I don't really want them to be too potent, but even though I'm going to be doing the hair in kind of that like lavender color, I don't want the eyebrows to look like that. I think it would look weird. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. Okay, so I think this is where we're going to close out the video. I'm pretty happy with where she's at. We got a nice, good, dull skin now. It's protected pretty well. It's got a nice, good blend, a velvet look to it. And we didn't have to go crazy adding in a lot of color. So if you're new to the hobby, it's all about picking your lightest color and your darkest color and learning how to get your 10%, your 20%, 30%, all the way up to 100% of mixing these two colors together. So as you see on her skin, you know, we have a nice dark, you know, the darkest color is like around here, and then we kind of blending up to the lightest color. And then we're blending down to the darker color, and we're blending back up there. Same thing here. We got the lighter color. We blend down to the darker around in here and the lighter around here. So if her chest was a little bit more opened up, we would have a lot more of a brighter areas around here and up around here. So there's only so much you can do when you have a little bit of an area like that. Same thing with the cheeks though. So once you start getting used to this and you start being able to blend this stuff, that's when you can start adding in the extra colors like the bright flesh, which is a little bit of reddish. So you work that into the cheeks a little more because cheeks kind of like a little bit of red. And then we have the pale flesh, which is orange, so you can hit that in some of those darker areas that kind of give it a little bit more pop. Then you got your Payne's gray to do like the eyeshadow there and stuff like that. So things kind of just keep going if you keep blending and you keep blending. And it's all about airbrush control. It's not about sitting there and like, okay, I got to hit it with the hardest color of a shade and the hardest color of the light and we're done. It's all about kind of like blending it together. You're doing some like lighter hits, you know. Just hitting it with a little bit of a lighter area on her cheek goes a long way than sitting there and spraying the hell out of it, you know. So just keep getting practice to blending and blending and blending. Once you get used to that, and you get used to like, okay, I know this is my lightest, I know this is my darkest, then I want to start adding in some blues and greens and yellows and start trying to get more of that natural look and everything. But you know, you don't always have to go that route. You can just keep it simple, the lightest and darkest colors of the look you're going for, and think of like comic book art, you know, like a lot of the old school 90s look comics, the way they were colored, you would see like your lightest color, it would go to blend to the darkest color. So it's kind of like doing that, you know. So I think at this point we're pretty good. I'm happy with it. Things can evolve though, you know, like down the line after I finish things up, if I feel the lips need to be a little bit redder, I might go back in. If I feel the eyes need to be a different color, I could go back in there. But I think the way things are going is I want her to be a little bit unique. So she's an air elemental, so we went more with the tanner look. So I think the hair is going to be like lavender white, and I think we're going to do a nice blonde streak in the hair. I think that'll be something a little bit different and have a little fun. And then since she's kind of like a, you know, orangey, you know, yellowish type of a tanned type of a paint up, I'm going to go more with a complementary color on the color wheel for that. But we'll get into that in the next video. So that's another thing too, is when you're picking your colors, you know, study up on complementary colors and all that type of stuff on the color wheel so you could kind of balance out your paint up and think about stuff like that. So that's where we're at now. I'm happy with it, and I think that's where we're going to end it. So thanks for watching, and next video we probably be able to close everything out with the hair, the base, and all the other details, and that'll be it.